This came out in 1979. And in my opinion, this is one of those scenes. The dinner scene where the alien bursts out his chest is somewhat iconic. It's one of those that's always going to be remembered in film.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak.
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
And we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
As of this recording, it is mid-August 2024. And we usually, not usually, but sometimes when there's a sequel coming out, a legacy sequel, a movie within a franchise, we try to do a recap, a breakdown rather, of a movie that would kind of go along with the newer movie. So we're going to mention that movie in a second here. Actually, no. It is Alien Romulus is coming out.
Yes.
So
hype.
We figured what better way to coincide with that than to take a look at the original here. So there's a lot to unpack. Let's get down to it here.
Yeah.
This movie was directed by Sir Ridley Scott.
Sir Ridley Scott.
Yeah. It was released May 25th, 1979. Great decade for movies. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for Alien.
Listen, man, when you hit me up and it was like, Alien Romulus is coming out, what do you think about us going over and watching and discussing Alien? And I was like, oh, can we please? This movie came out in 1979, as you mentioned, and we briefly talked about it before we went on the air. This movie holds up incredibly well. From 1979 to today, I would strongly urge anybody who hasn't seen Alien from Ridley Scott in 1979, watch it, and then let's talk about it, because man, it's one of those movies that just holds up extremely well, and it is a great horror sci-fi movie.
The one thing I wanted to touch on before we got started here is that Alien had a great tagline that they used in the posters and they used in the trailers too, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah.
And the movie holds true to that tagline, and it's in space. No one can hear you scream.
Easily one of the best taglines when it comes to movies, in my opinion.
Yeah, powerful, absolutely powerful, and they don't disappoint.
no, because look, man, when this came out in 1979, neither of us were alive, right. And so I'm pretty sure the same is for you. I was very young when I first attempted to watch this movie, and it is terrifying. And as an adult, it is still terrifying. And that tagline coincides so well with the movie, where like in space, no one can hear you scream. Just that tagline alone is terrifying when you really think about it, because it's not really a concept you just think about every single day. Like, there is no sound in space, but this movie made sure to remind you right on the poster, in the trailers, in space, no one can hear you scream. And there's just this real uncomfortableness to that it's scary in nature in itself. And the movie was like, we're going to put the fear in you, and just heads up, like you're going for a ride. And, it lives up to it, in my opinion.
All righty. Well, let's get started here.
Yeah.
So the opening scene sets the tone. It's completely quiet, except for, some rustling of paper. You hear some beeps here and there, but you don't see anybody. And, Scott is just showcasing the empty ship here.
Yes, this was beautiful.
Yeah. The soundtrack is eerie. And the computer starts going, setting up the movie here. We don't get too much of what's going on until we see the crew in hypersleep. And they're all waking up. Still don't hear them talking. Just nice, quiet. And it's like the calm before the storm.
Yes, it's very somber. Like when I really appreciated that they took that moment, because as the movie progresses, there's going to be a lot of tension and thrills and running and whatnot. So in these brief moments, he's kind of giving you not necessarily a layout of the ship, but allowing you to appreciate it. And you're just going down the halls, seeing the technology, seeing the hypersleep, seeing them wake up. And like you said, it's very quiet, very somber. And that's all going to change. But I'm glad that they took the time to kind of like ease us in a little bit. And I thought like it just showcased how great those set designs were.
So we have the commercial spaceship, the Nostromos.
Mm-hmm.
It's returning to Earth with a 7-member crew. They call it Stasis. We have Captain Dallas, Executive Officer Kane, Warrant Officer Ripley, Navigator Lambert, Science Officer Ash, and engineers Parker and Brett. And the ship's computer that they call Mother detects a transmission from a nearby moon and awakens the crew. So, following company policy to investigate, quote unquote, any systemized transmission indicating intelligent origin, they land on the moon, and Dallas, Kane, and Lambert head out to investigate the signal's origin.
Yeah.
I took down a note here that as they were getting off and headed to the moon there, the debris blowing reminded me of snow.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if Carpenter took some inspiration here or not, but I was thinking about John Carpenter's The Thing.
I can see that.
Another sci-fi horror set in a single location with a small cast.
Yeah.
Where the creature picks off everybody one by one.
One by one. Yeah. I could see that. It didn't even cross my mind, but now that you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, it does. Like there's a heavy like imagery there that I can see connected between the two. I love when they get the signal. Parker immediately is, and it kind of gives us an understanding of the ship and who this crew is too before they venture out. Is that Parker's like, well, we're not really a rescue crew. Like that's not what we're equipped to do. Like that's not how, like, we're not equipped to do this. And Captain's just like, listen, this is the deal. This is in the contract. Like, should something like this arise, it is our obligation to check it out. You know what I mean? That's how it's going to be. Okay. And Parker's just like, okay. But I like something as small as that, because it lets you know that should a situation arise, this crew may not be prepared for it or how to handle it. So right from the gate, they're letting you know, like, hey, if something goes down, we're not really equipped for this sort of a mission. And we know as a viewer that things are going to get bad. And it's a nice little illustration of like the character themselves being like, hey, we're not really equipped for this type of thing, but we got to do it.
Right. And there's a lot of foreshadowing early on. Absolutely. I did want to touch on that note there. So Alien came out in 1979, and John Carpenter's The Thing, which is a remake, it came out in 1982. So take that for what it is. So the party discovers that the disturbance is from a derelict alien spaceship. And inside, they find the remains of a large alien with a hole in its torso.
Yeah.
And Mother later deciphers part of the transmission, which Ripley determines is an actual warning message.
Yeah.
And Kane discovers a chamber containing hundreds of large eggs. And when he touches one, a spider-like creature springs out and penetrates his helmet. We later find out that they call these facehuggers.
Yeah.
In the mythology. It is a tense moment, but you don't get a chance to process it because you get a quick cut as soon as that thing hits his helmet.
Yep. It's on him immediately. And to go back to the note that you had mentioned about it being a possible warning, Ripley's bringing up like, hey guys, like this actually might not be an SOS. It's coming in more of a warning. And we start to get our foreshadowing a little bit, because the character known as Ash is very much, I don't want to say he's kind of blowing her off, but he's very much like, don't worry about it. If it is a warning, they would have figured it out by now. It's like, keep going. And Ash is one of those characters that as the story progresses, you kind of side-eye him a little bit. And this was the beginning of that notion where, like, from this moment on, Ripley has been shown to be very cautious, very careful. And Ash is kind of just like, don't worry about it. If it's a warning, they'll figure it out when they get there. Don't be so like up in your arms about it. But yeah, and like you said, we get to this face hugger scene, and right off the bat, like the atmosphere is pretty terrifying because you see these eggs and he's kind of checking it out. He's all alone, and the pod opens up. And as a viewer, for anyone who's probably watched for the first time, you're like, just don't do it. Don't do it. Like, don't lean over it.
Right, and he's
Don't
doing this.
and he's doing the lean. And you're like, no, he's doing the lean. And the thing just jumps out. And like you said, we don't get a moment to actually absorb what happens. Like, it gets right to his face and there's a quick cut. So we have no idea what's happening to this character at this moment.
So as we stated, the creature attaches itself to his face. Dallas and Lambert carry a now unconscious Kane back to the Nostromo's.
Mm-hmm.
Nostromo, excuse me, no S at the end. As the senior acting officer, Ripley, who we haven't mentioned it yet, played by the great Sigourney Weaver,
yes,
refuses to let them aboard.
Mm-hmm.
She is citing quarantine regulations.
Yep.
But the character you had mentioned, Ash, overrides her decision and lets them inside. She's pleading with them. She's saying it's a 24-hour quarantine. I believe Dallas, the person in charge, he's outside, but she's in charge once he leaves the ship. I think she even said whatever is out there could kill us all. Something could happen.
She's very clear. And again, they have protocol. Dallas and Lambert, you can tell they're kind of in a panic because they know that there's this life form that they're not aware of is attached to Dallas's Kane's face. Like, it's gone through the helmet. Completely through the helmet. So that in itself is terrifying. And it's attached to his face. And you can tell that like Dallas and Lambert are like, just let us in. And Ripley's like, no, there's a quarantine. There's a process. You understand this. And when Ash overrides her, I'll never forget the first time I actually saw it when I was older and I could really have an appreciation for it. I got so angry at Ash because I was like, how dare you? Like, this isn't a situation where she's exaggerating in the moment. It's like, no, that is a life form that we know absolutely nothing about. There has to be a quarantine process. We don't know what that's going to what's going to happen when you bring that thing in. And like you said, it could kill us all. And you see Ash, he just hits the button and the door opens and completely undermines her, even though she's a top ranking officer on the ship at that moment. And again, Ash has these moments where you're kind of giving him a side and go, wait a minute.
Right. And I like how Dallas, he's screaming, that's an order. Let us in.
Mm-hmm.
That's an order. She's like, and then she just noted, sir, but I'm following protocol.
Yup. I was with Ripley. I was like, girl, you're doing the right thing. I'm with you right now.
So while Parker and Brett take care of repairs on the Nostromo, Ash attempts to remove the creature from Kane's face, but stops when he discovers that its extremely corrosive acidic blood could hurt Kane and potentially damage the ship's hull. It eventually detaches itself and is found dead. So the scene, he cuts, and it has acid for blood. It starts going through the floors. And this is not good because you don't want a hole in your ship in the middle of space.
Not in space, man. You don't need a hole in the hull, man. And like, this whole scene, again, the movie is continuing to add tension and add fear because every time they tried to remove the face hugger, you can see the tail wrap around the neck and it would get tighter and tighter. And they're kind of like, okay, don't, like, every time we try to do something here, it's squeezing around his neck. So then they put him into somewhat of an X-ray MRI machine to kind of get a full scope of what's happening. And they do see that something is lodged down Kane's throat. And they're not really sure, what it is. And they're like, oh, maybe it's keeping him alive, putting him into a state of a coma. And Dallas is like, get it off. Like, Dallas is not like, no. He's like, get it off. And Ash, here we go with Ash again, is like, well, you don't really want to remove it because if that's feeding him oxygen, there's no way of knowing that if by removing it, we might end up killing him. And Dallas is like, take it off. You know what I mean? Like, he's just like, no, like there's something wrong here. We have to get this thing off of him. And then they go to do the cutting. And as you mentioned, acid for blood, as if these things couldn't be more terrifying. acid for blood.
Right.
Burns through the hole, and they're like, oh God, and they're all panicking, and they're like, all right, we can't do anything right now. And they have to just wait the process out. And like you said, by the time they come back, it has detached and it is dead.
And the scene is great.
Oh yeah.
Because it's detached. He's still laying there.
Mhm.
He hasn't woken up, but you see like this tail dangle
Yes.
and hit Ripley's shoulder, and then the facehugger falls on her,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like you were in the moment and felt a spider fall on top of
Yes.
you.
Yeah. It's that immediate, like, you know what I mean?
Like,
Like the
oh, it
immediate
felt
reaction. Yeah.
gross, right? And
Yeah.
she screams obviously, but then you see it fall in all its disgusting glory. It's
Mhm.
ugly.
Yeah.
You know?
This thing is amazing creature design, but yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah. So after the crew returned to space, Kane does wake up again. He has
Mm-hmm.
some memory loss, but otherwise seems fine. And before we jump to that, I did want to note here that they took a moment to show the underside of the facehugger.
Oh yeah.
And I looked it up, some trivia here. He used real animal parts for that, particularly oysters. So
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
what they,
that's the vibe I got. I didn't look into it,
yeah,
and I was like, "Oh, that kind of reminds me of oysters." So that's pretty
yeah.
cool.
And a liver as well.
Okay.
So he used organic
Mhm.
animal parts for that scene there. Um, so Kane wakes up, and everyone's like, "Oh, yay, Kane's back!"
Yeah.
Right, they're giving us a sense of joy.
Mhm.
So, during a final crew meal before returning to stasis, because 'cause they're gonna go back to hypersleep, I forget how many months, I wanna say 9, something like
Okay.
that, before they have to head back, and all of a sudden he starts choking, and they're like, "Are you okay? Is it the food? What's happening here?" And then all of a sudden he starts, convulsing, and then they're like,
Yeah.
"Uh-oh, what's happening now?" So they get him laid out flat on the table, and, he's convulsing. All of a sudden, a small alien creature bursts from his chest, killing him and then escaping onto the ship. So we're going to unpack this here.
Yeah.
The scene is wild.
Very.
It works for several reasons. One of them is because John Hurt sells this moment. What an acting performance here.
Mhm.
He goes from choking to convulsing to screaming like a banshee because this
Yep.
thing is happening to him. Everyone else, they're selling the moment as well, but he's just pouring all of his energy into this moment. What would it feel like for something to burst out of your chest from the
Yeah.
inside out? The story is that only one cast member knew that this was going to happen. Hurt.
Mhm.
This has since been debunked because the cast knew from reading the script that the scene was going to happen. They did not know how much blood was going to come out.
Yeah.
They did not know what the creature would look like. They also did not know that it was going to be real animal blood being used and
Mhm.
real animal guts being
Yeah.
used. So having said that, yes, the reactions are genuine, but not because they didn't know the scene was going to happen, but they
Mhm.
didn't realize the detail Carpenter was going to use to make the scene look like that. So for
Yeah.
the most part, the reactions are mostly genuine. And it's, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, it stunk too, I was told, because of the
Oh,
animal part and the animal
I
blood.
I believe it. This is one of those scenes that we're very fortunate that in cinema, like in cinema as a whole, there are going to be scenes in movies that are so impactful that they're always going to be remembered. You could think of scenes like when the T-Rex breaks out in Jurassic Park, when Neo dodges the bullets for the first time in the Matrix. There's these moments in film that kind of remind us like the beauty of filmmaking and whatnot, and will stand the test of time. Again, this came out in 1979, and in my opinion, this is one of those scenes. The dinner scene where the alien bursts out his chest is somewhat iconic. It's one of those that's always going to be remembered in film, in my opinion. It was jarring. It was terrifying. It's still impactful to me. I just recently watched it again, having watched the movie numerous times. And every time I see that scene, the performance is fantastic. And then you have the reaction from the crew and just the idea of it, just the idea. And remember what it must have been like to have seen this in the theater in 1979, where you have no idea what's coming. We have the luxury. We've seen this movie a few times already. So, it's common to us now. And you might see someone who watches this movie for the first time now after seeing numerous movies that have taken ideas from Alien. So to them, it won't be as fresh or as new, but I can't imagine what it must have been like in 1979, in 1980, seeing this movie for the first time and seeing such an insane scene play out. And it looks fantastic. It still holds up incredibly well. Great puppeteering, great use of the organic things that they used and whatnot.
Right.
Great performances. But in my opinion, this is one of those scenes that has cemented itself in the history books of film. It's that good, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's great. And once again, shout out to Hurt, because even after he's dead, essentially, he still found a moment to do like a little.
You see the hand, right?
The
Yes,
hand is
yes,
twitching
the hand.
because
Yep.
it's almost like, as you know, the body, even though if you die, sometimes it has the nerves,
Yeah.
it'll still twitch or do something like that, and Hurt just a little and you see
Yes.
it behind the terrifying alien that just came out of him.
Yeah.
I like that out of everybody, Parker seemed to have the most sense. He
Mhm.
grabbed a knife and he was
Yeah,
ready. He was like,
ready to go, man.
he was like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but I'm gonna do something right now that we need to do. And Ash stopped him. He said, "No, don't
Ash,
touch
stop.
it."
See, and there's that
Ash
Ash thing
again.
again. Like
Yeah.
Parker's ready to go. Like everyone's kind of in this fear and justifiably so. And Parker's afraid too, but Parker immediately goes in defense mode and he grabs the knife and he's ready. And again, you have Ash being like, "No, don't touch it." And again, from if you want to play devil's advocate, you could be like, well, he is the science officer. Maybe he's worried about Parker. What will happen if he attacks it? He already knows the facehugger has acid blood. What do we know is going to happen? You could play those cards if you want, but I feel like at this point in the game, we're kind of like, I'm watching you, Ash.
Right. It's not Carpenter, excuse me. Scott is doing his best to let you know Ash is not a good guy. Ash is not a good character. I'm letting you know so that when eventually the twist comes, you're not surprised, but yet he still found a way to surprise us. We're gonna get to that.
Oh, it's a good one.
Yeah. So after ejecting Kane's body out of the airlock, the crew attempts to locate the creature with tracking devices so they can kill it.
Yes.
Brett follows the crew's pet cat, Jones, into a landing leg compartment where the now full-grown alien, we have come to know this as the xenomorph, attacks Brett and disappears with his body. I believe this is the first time we see the second mouth. The mouth inside the mouth.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to unpack this here.
Yup.
I'm going to get your reaction first. I am on the side of I have a little bit of a nitpick I felt whenever I watched this scene, but as the horror guy, the the sci-fi horror guy in particular, I want you to go first, and then I'm gonna chime in here on. We get to see the full-size alien now, this terrifying looking creature, pretty much kill Brett instantly.
Yeah,
So,
this scene,
yes, please, Ricardo.
is scary. Now, when I was younger, it was something that I overlooked. When I got older and watched, I was like, wow, that's a really short time span to go from such a tiny thing to a full-grown thing.
Right.
And I kind of move on from it really quick because when you see, like for me personally, when I saw the design of the alien, I was so taken back by how creative it was that all of a sudden that thought process I had was just gone. Like I was just like, oh, I'm not even worried anymore because I'm just blown away at the sheer incredible nature of this design. In my opinion, and I've said this to multiple people, I think that the xenomorph design is one of the most horrifying creature feature designs I've ever seen. It is absolutely just scary beyond belief. And then the idea that it has this like incredibly long dome it's always like wet and smoky, and it has the mouth within the mouth, which for some reason makes it even more terrifying. Like it's already terrifying enough that it has these like silver grayish teeth and drool, but it opens its mouth, and then there's another mouth that comes
Yeah.
out and like rips flesh, and I'm like, what is this? And it's just, and then it's very quick. You get it for a moment. They're kind of teasing it. You see the cat is kind of peeking from behind the corner, like, and you're like, all right, the cat knows. And you kind of see just like a little bit of the tail, and it comes down. He turns around, does the hit, scoops him up, and it's over. And it's all done probably within like 7 seconds. But it gives you just enough that you're blown away by what you saw. But yeah, it's an absolutely just frightening scene. And again, it goes from like 0 to 100 really quick.
Oh yeah. So you touched on it, and this is the thing that it always hit me here, because it's only been a few minutes. We don't know. In movie time, maybe it was longer than that.
Yeah. Could have
15,
been an
maybe
hour.
20
Could have been an
minutes.
hour
We
if
don't
they
know.
wanted
An
to.
hour,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But when we last saw the alien, it was this little baby, basically a baby,
Yeah.
popping out of out of John Hurt,
Mhm.
and we along the way they see the mold. Brett sees the molted
Yes.
skin, so it
Yes.
molted, and I always question, how did it grow that big in such a short amount of time? We
Mhm.
didn't see it we didn't see it eat any food.
Mm-mm.
We didn't see it drink any water. How? And this is an issue I've always had, but like you, it's such an awesome moment.
Yeah, the reveal
You
gets
kind
me.
of move on a little. The movie doesn't give you a chance to think about it too long.
And I think that's the best way of looking at it, is that the movie and we touched on it earlier with the Facehugger. The movie presents you with things and it doesn't give you enough time to analyze it, and it kind of puts you in the same position. I don't know if this was intentional, but it kind of puts you on the ship. You feel like one of the crewmates because all of this is happening and you have no idea how to respond to it. So the idea that it literally goes from 0 to 100 in such a short amount of time, again, as you mentioned, 15 minutes, maybe it was an hour. Maybe this guy's searching for an hour. I, like you, still had questions, kind of like, oh, maybe they could have, I don't know, put some context in there to kind of let us know how it grew so big. Maybe it ate the cat, who knows? But no, the cat's alive and it
Right.
molds. And again, the easy thing that Ridley has, he has a great cheat, is that this is our introduction to the alien. So we can't say he's wrong. We can't say he's right because we don't know the
because
physics of the creature.
Maybe this species grows
like we don't know
so much faster than us.
Like, is that how it like is that how their metabolism is? Like once they become free of that human embodiment, do they just grow? Like, is that, and again, Ridley has the ability to cheat because it's our introduction. So we can't say you're wrong because we don't know the science of the xenomorph. And that's a great way to get around it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that they touch on that later on in the other movies. They talk about how they grow fast. So exactly,
they're quick. They're very quick. And you're like,
and then this is that term that we come across all the time. It's a suspension of disbelief.
Yep. You just take it.
We're watching a movie. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So the crew determines the alien must be in the air ducts.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas enters the ducts with a flamethrower, intending to force the monster into an airlock, but it ambushes him and seemingly kills him. So this is the first time we get introduced to the air ducts, which becomes a staple in the franchise eventually.
Yeah.
We have one beep that we see.
Oh, I love those sound effects. Yep.
We have another beep, and it's the alien.
Yep.
And it's getting closer and closer and closer to his dot. The two dots there, signified by the beeps. And they're yelling. They're like, it's on top of you. He's like, I don't see it. I don't see it. And, all you see is this blinking dot. He climbs down. And he doesn't realize he climbed down right next to the xenomorph.
Dude, he's right in front of it. And
he turns, one flash, and you just see it reach out to get him, and done right there.
There again, and it's the beauty of it being a practical suit, an actor in a suit. And for whatever reason, that was a scene that as a kid never left my mind. Like the image of the alien with the arms extended, where it just immediately reaches out and you hear the screech from the xenomorph, terrified me. So you have all this tension and everybody's freaking out. Lambert, everybody's just like panicking. They're like, no, it's there. And then when he drops, you're like, oh my God. And they go, it's like, I don't know if she says it's right to your left or behind you. I can't remember the exact verbiage that she uses. And he just looks and it's there and it just extends the arm. Everything cuts. You don't even need to see anything. And it just, it makes your blood curl a little bit. It's wild.
Lambert implores that they abandon ship and flee in an escape shuttle. But Ripley, now in command, explains it will not support 4 people and insists on continuing Dallas's plan of flushing out the alien. Accessing Mother, Ripley discovers the company has secretly ordered Ash to return with the alien for study and to consider the crew expendable.
Yes.
She confronts Ash, who tries to kill her, but Parker intervenes and clubs Ash over the head, knocking his head loose and revealing him to be an android. This is a reveal. It is a twist. So we're going to unpack this here. I have a note here. Not to be outdone by John Hurt, Ian Holm, the actor that plays Ash.
Yes.
He goes off here for the android reveal. He's flailing around. He's making weird noises. He's spitting. I'm assuming it's milk everywhere.
Yeah. I thought it was milk. I was like, that looks like milk.
And I guess Ridley wanted that to be like the chemicals inside of him, coming out. It's very graphic.
Yeah.
Because Parker decapitates him, and you see the hanging head just by hitting him hard. What a reveal. Just when you think that we're out of reveals, Ridley Scott hits you with another reveal here again.
It was so cool because at this point, we fully know Ash cannot be trusted. When she sees the crew is expendable, there's actually this secret mission like, hey, you are to bring the life form back no matter what. The crew is expendable. So now leading everything up to this point and Ash's actions, we know like he cannot be trusted. And he's waiting. He's right beside her when she turns. And he just kind of like, I wish I didn't have to be this way kind of deal. And he just starts attacking her and throwing her all over the place. So that in itself is already worthy of like, oh man, I knew it. Like that's the twist. He's in on it. He's willing to kill everybody and really goes, yeah, we're going to go a little step above that. By the way, we're going to introduce something that you had no idea was in the movie. He's an android. And you're like, what? And again, when he's fighting Ridley, he starts to sweat, but it's that white liquid. Like it's the white substance. Right. Very similar to milk or creamer. And I remember watching it going, what is that? Like, what is this white goo that's dripping? What is that? And he starts attacking her and he starts to have spasms and he does great body acting in this scene, man. Like he's going all in. And as you mentioned, gets his head knocked off and you see the wires and you're like, all right, we're full, like we were already full sci-fi, but we have an android on the ship. And Parker just like I don't know if he called him an android or if he said he's a robot, like something along those lines. He might have called him an android. But it was just another way for Ridley to kind of surprise you and to make you, it's still up to this point in the movie. Again, we're way past the 30-minute mark in this movie that he can still hit us with surprises. And that's another reason why this movie holds up so well is that like it goes above and beyond what it needs to bring you some surprises and twists.
There's also an interesting choice that happens here when Ash is he's beating up Ripley. He's throwing her around. And to kill her, he rolled up a magazine or paper and he attempted to suffocate her by sticking the magazine in her mouth. And that's an interesting choice. It's a very odd way to take somebody out.
It is.
But it was still scary and we still felt it because obviously, and then Sigourney, she's selling it too, because she's scared. She sees it. So it was like, what is he trying to do there? I always thought like, what's happening there? And now that I'm older, it's like, oh no, he was trying to suffocate her,
He was trying to suffocate her. And again, like me being a weirdo and be like, okay, but why wouldn't he just why wouldn't he just club her to death? Why wouldn't he just strangle her? And I kept thinking, no one else knows what's happening here. And I'm like, oh, he's going to suffocate her in a way where there will be no bruises. Like, that was just my brain
There you
being
go.
like, oh, he doesn't want to choke her because she will bruise badly. He doesn't want to bludgeon her because it'll be like, hey, like, this was a fight. But if he can stick a magazine into her mouth, if there's any bruising, it'll be within her mouth. It's not on the surface. And I was like, is that what it is? Or was Ridley Scott just being really Scott and going, what's a really horrifying way to suffocate a person? You know what? Magazine. We're just gonna we're gonna roll up this magazine here and we're gonna do it. So again, I don't know what it is. I don't know, but my brain started doing, oh, maybe that's the reason. Maybe. And then I'm like, you know what? Really probably just thought, what's a really terrifying way to do this? You know what? Magazine.
Right. So the survivors reactivate Ash's head. And we see some great practical effects there with with the head, and then we can see it, but there's a quick cut where it goes from the prosthetic to the actor's head. And Ash confirms the company's orders and states that the alien is unkillable. And while expressing admiration for it and taunting them about their chances for survival, Ripley shuts him down, and then Parker incinerates him. He doesn't waste any time using the flamethrower on him. The remaining crew decides to self-destruct the Nostromo and escape in the shuttle. However, unfortunately, Parker and Lambert are ambushed and killed by the alien while gathering supplies.
Yep.
Some great camera work here.
Oh, there's some great stuff. She's like leaning against, she's facing a different direction, and it just kind of comes up behind her. And Parker sees it, and he's telling her, and he's got like the flamethrower. But yeah, and then the alien sends his attention to Parker and actually takes Parker out first. And he does the whole face, the mouth within the mouth, takes him out. Meanwhile, the tail is going after Lambert. It's a really well done scene.
During the scene, we get a shift. The camera is shifting back and forth between them and between Ripley. And we get introduced to another thing that becomes a staple of the Alien franchise, the first-person camera mode. And the more you see it from the point of view from the crew member, and then you see it from the point of view of the alien as well.
Yeah.
And but in this case, it's focusing on just Ripley, and you could see her. You could see the labyrinth of the spaceship, and it makes the movie feel a little bit more claustrophobic and scarier.
Yeah, 100%. And there was moments where I was like, oh, did they deliberately make some of these areas a little tighter just to get that feeling? Because you do feel that.
Now on her own, Ripley initiates the self-destruct. She's by herself now. Everyone was killed at this point. She initiates the self-destruct sequence, but finds the alien blocking her path to the shuttle. She retreats, attempts unsuccessfully to abort the self-destruct, flees back to the shuttle with Jones, and narrowly escapes as the Nostromo explodes. So right before this, Sigourney is selling the moment so well. She tied her hair back. She's screaming at the computer. She's walking around with a flamethrower. Sigourney Weaver looks like a star.
Exactly. She's got that look, man. Like, this is where, if you had any doubts up to this point, any at all, when that image of her with the flamethrower and her walking backwards, she's got this intense look while also being afraid and whatnot. I'm like, that's an action hero right there. Like, she looks fantastic.
As Ripley prepares for stasis, the hypersleep, she discovers that the alien is aboard, having stowed itself into a narrow compartment. Okay. So this movie has been filled with plenty of twists. And Ridley Scott, we get hit with this last one right before the movie is about to end. He's like, oh, you think I didn't have any left in me? I got you with one more. We get the infamous tank top or shirt and underwear scene from Ripley here. And because she's about to go into stasis again, cryosleep. And they're not wearing much when they go in there, you know? She's in a vulnerable position physically and technically speaking, like she's not
Mhm.
wearing much, so she doesn't have much
Yeah.
protection.
No
And
protective gear, no weapon,
right,
completely no. She's nothing.
exactly. So she doesn't know what to do, and she retreats. And this is where she realizes the alien is stuck, because it's in that little narrow compartment, but it's chewing away with the second mouth at the
Mhm.
cables and the area, to free itself. So that's as far as that scene goes. But it's we're breathing a sigh of relief at this moment.
Oh, yeah.
Like she's undressing, but and Scott probably has his reasons for doing that, obviously. But um, we knew it was for a technical reason too. She wanted to go back to cryo sleep, and
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, the alien reaches out, and you're like, oh my gosh, this thing is still alive. You
Yeah.
know,
They do such the way they reveal it is great too, because you have no idea as a viewer that you're looking at the alien, because the alien is kind of sideways. So again, it's got that very long dome. It's sideways and it blends in with the ship.
right,
So
right,
when she's there and the self-destruct has gone off, Ridley does what Ridley does, where he's giving us a moment where we feel like it's over. Like we're like, oh, okay, she escaped. You know what I mean? So we're kind of taking a deep breath. She's removing her clothes. She's getting ready to go to cryo sleep. So all that's happening, we're doing the same thing. Like we're decompressing. Like we're kind of coming down and we're like, okay, she did it. All right, we're going to go to sleep and whatnot. She's getting ready. And again, it was so great the way they did it, because we're literally looking at the xenomorph and have no clue. It's not until the arm reaches out and you get a great jump scare and she backs up and you're like, no, no, there's no, how doesn't matter. It found a way. And like you said, it's chewing away at the cable, trying to break itself free. And she's backing up very slowly. Like she's
right.
doing, like, she doesn't want to bring any attention, because I can't imagine what she's thinking. Is she thinking, is it knocked out? Is it completely stuck? Is it unconscious? Like she has no idea. So she's just backing up and she's slowly coming up with a plan. And we see it unfolding as the scene continues.
So she puts on a spacesuit and she flushes the creature out. Um, it approaches Ripley, but
Mm-hmm.
before it can kill her, she opens an airlock door, and the alien still manages to hang
Whew.
on, even though she opened up the airlock.
Mm-hmm.
But Ripley fires a grappling hook gun to push it out. So it does go flying out the door there, but guess what? It
We're
still
not done.
found a way to grab on. So it just
We're not
won't
done.
die.
We're
But
not
it
done.
it grasped at uh at the engines, actually.
Mhm.
And she saw that, so she hit the button to get the engines going. She burned it up, and that it blasted away the alien into deep space here.
Yep.
So after recording her final log entry, she places Jones the cat and herself into stasis for the trip back to Earth.
Yeah.
And that's our movie.
Man, that final scene, there's a scream that Sigourney Weaver has that is amazing. And I think that it's a testament to horror films in general, is when you can always have a great screamer. We've heard it before, like, oh my god, this actress has a great scream for this film and great horror and whatnot. The scene where she puts on the spacesuit and she has her back to the alien and she's slowly peering her head.
Yeah.
She's just waiting. She's waiting. She's waiting. She's waiting. And it comes right there. And she lets out this scream, man, that's just guttural. And it's so terrifying. And she's able to hit the button and backs off. And like you said, here comes Ridley being Ridley. He goes out. Nope, he's not out yet. He's hanging onto the door. She's like, all right, got you. Take this, you SOB kind of a deal. Bam, shoots it. You're like, that'll be it. Nope. Door closes, kind of traps the gun a little bit, hangs onto the ship. I was like, good Lord, man. We're never gonna get rid of this thing. And it's near the engines, and you're like, all right, that's it. Hit it. And she hits it and goes across sleep, and that's the ending. And man, what a movie, dude. Like, what a movie. I could brag, boast about this movie, so I'm blue in the face. This is just, as a sci-fi guy, I absolutely love science fiction. I love horror science fiction, and the idea of space, which is already terrifying to me. There are
Right.
two places, the two scariest places to me are the ocean
Right.
and space.
Right.
Like, the top and bottom, man, like that absolutely terrifies me. So when Ridley comes up with this concept, and there are alien movies, there's UFO movies, there's space movies, we've seen movies, but for whatever reason, um, the way he captured horror with space and the atmosphere and the xenomorph creation, like, man, that dude gets all the applause from me. This is one of those movies that I I wish I could go back in time and watch it in 1979 and gauge the reaction of the people around me, because I can tell that this movie was special when it was released.
And there were so many things about this movie that made it scary, but the biggest note, and this is a staple of a good horror movie over the years, particularly older ones,
Mhm.
it's the practical effects.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, the
dude.
design of the eggs, they're really there. You know,
Mhm.
the slime, the face hugger coming out of the egg, the face hugger chasing people, jumping on people, and then of course the design of the xenomorph, as you stated. You
Mhm.
know, it's got that elongated head. It's
It's
huge.
it's
You
yeah,
know,
and this thing is not small.
you know,
This thing has got to be like 8 feet tall. This
yeah,
is ridiculous.
yeah, 7, 8 feet tall. It's got arms and legs, so it can move
Mhm.
like a person. It's got that long tail. It's got the mouth inside the mouth. It's got an exoskeleton.
Yeah.
Acid for blood. Like, wow, whoever made this design, kudos.
Ridley wasn't joking when he made sure the script said, like, you can't beat this thing. It's unkillable.
Yeah,
Like, it's almost, and it's funny because as the movies continue, you kind of get into the idea of, like, is this a weapon? Like, what is this? But it's a horrifying creation, and major kudos to anybody who came up with it. And it's almost like the xenomorph is kind of like the final boss of a game, because it is unkillable. Like, the idea that you want to inflict damage to a creature that has acid for blood is already a huge issue for you, and we've seen it in later movies where that acid blood comes into play when someone is trying to hurt the alien. So it's just one of those things where there's so many scary things about it. I love that you touched on the practical effects, man. I think the practical effects make this movie hold up so well, because you can feel the depth within the scene. Like, when the actors are working with the xenomorph, like, you can feel it. It breathes the same air as the actors. It takes up the same space as the actors. The actors are making eye contact with something there. There's physical touch, all of those things, and it makes it that much scarier. The practical effects are incredible, man. The set designs are incredible. And it just adds to the atmosphere of the movie. And again, like, there were some corridors that felt somewhat tight, and it adds to that claustrophobic feel of space. The movie also does this thing where you don't get to see space often. Like, there are a lot of times in movies where they make a whole sequence or scene where they're looking out into space, look how beautiful space is. The movie doesn't do that as much. You get to go out when they go to the SOS, and they go explore that planet or whatnot. But outside of that, everything's very contained to the ship. And there's a real claustrophobic feel to that. And it only adds to the scary nature of the movie. Really did a bang up job with this, man. Like, this is one of his best.
so we're talking about 1979. So let's take a look at the budget and the box office here. The budget was 11 million,
Okay.
and Alien ended up making 184.7 million. So, but even by today's standards, that's pretty great. So we're thinking
That's
back in 1979,
that's amazing, dude.
Yeah. Um, Alien also made some noise at the Oscars,
Yes, as it
and
should.
it was nominated for 2.
Okay.
It won one of them. So the one that it was nominated that it didn't win was Best Production Design, which
Okay.
was originally called Best Art Direction,
Mhm.
and it won Best Visual Effects. So
Yeah, dude.
yeah, that's really cool. Let's take a look at some other trivia here. You had mentioned this off the air, so I figured let's put it in.
Yeah.
The Xenomorph has a total of 4 minutes of screen time and doesn't make its first appearance until about an hour into the movie.
Incredible. And again, it might be a staple of movies from that time period. Like we talk about Jaws, we talk about Alien, even Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy's not in that movie for a long period of time. These movies really focused on the less is more approach, as well as building that tension and suspense. And that's what we're riding on. And that's an incredible thing to do, because you're relying on your audience to build the fear themselves, because we're like, what's around that corner? What's in that air duct, what's in that corridor? Like, we're doing the work, like, because we're terrified and we don't know what's going to pop around any corner. So that, I think that's really, really cool that it has that minimal screen time in the movie, but its presence still feels so big.
The official runtime for Alien is 1 hour and 57 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
The original cut ran for 3 hours and 12 minutes.
Okay, Ridley.
So that would be great if we ever got that. We probably won't, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Ridley Scott cites 3 movies as the shaping influences of Alien. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, which was released in 1977.
Amazing.
2001, A Space Odyssey, released in
I see that.
1968. And also the Texas Chainsaw Massacre of 1974 for its treatment of horror. So those 3 movies influenced Scott.
That's, and you know what's amazing about that is, like, those 3 movies, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, to Star Wars, like, there's no connection between those genres whatsoever. But he took the best bits and pieces that he loved about those movies and he brought them over. And I think it's really cool that Star Wars got in there, because Star Wars has been so influential with film and many directors. So the idea that he could say, like, yeah, like, that was part of the process, I think that's dope.
Harrison Ford turned down the role of Dallas, the captain of the ship, as did Tommy Lee Jones.
That one I knew.
Tommy Lee Jones wanted to play the alien as well, if he couldn't play the captain.
Give me the xenomorph, daddy. I will be the xenomorph. Let me do it. I'm like, okay, Tommy, you want? Okay.
So, and we'll touch on it. Eventually, it went to Tom Skerritt. The role of Ellen Ripley was down to 2 roommates at Yale, I believe the college was. And it was between Sigourney Weaver and Meryl Streep. None other than Meryl Streep, right? Weaver was offered the role due to Streep, unfortunately, mourning the passing of her partner, John Cazale. So if that event didn't happen to Meryl, we might have had a completely different movie. And when we think about Meryl Streep, you don't think action star. So,
and she go ahead, continue.
Yeah. And how much different her career would have been had she had this movie? Would she have gone on to be this amazing dramatic actor still? We don't know.
It's so great, because Meryl Streep is obviously, when people talk about, like, the greats of the great, they say like, oh, like, they're pulling a Meryl Streep, like, she went hard, she pulled the Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep is that magnificent and talented an actor that it wouldn't surprise me that she would be offered the role, and I do think she would have done a great job. But it's one of those things that I'm happy that Sigourney Weaver was given that opportunity, and it's horrible that what happened to Meryl Streep was the reason why she wasn't able to take that role. And when we're talking about careers, I think that it worked out in favor for both, because, like you said, who knows what Meryl Streep's career would have been like following that. Would she have fallen into the more horror trope? Would she have gone down that path and be like, man, Meryl Streep did great in horror, let's give her more horror? But I think it worked out for both parties in the way that it was meant to, because now I can't imagine seeing anybody else be Ripley except Sigourney Weaver. Like,
Absolutely.
she made that role her own. When we talk about iconic characters, and if you want to make it even deeper, like iconic female characters or just iconic characters, period, I think she still fits into both categories. If you were like, hey, what are the most iconic characters of all time? I would like, look, man or woman, it doesn't matter. Non-binary, it doesn't matter. Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is one of my favorite iconic characters of all time. And she has become, almost a symbol for the Alien franchise in itself, because she's that connected.
Right. And kudos to Ridley. He made a woman the lead in his movie in 1979.
In 79, dude.
And
like,
in an action movie. Well, not action movie, but as an action character. It wasn't a drama. It wasn't anything like that. It was like, no, I want the most BA person in the movie to
Mm-hmm.
be a woman to
Yep.
take on this thing. And, good for him. And now
She.
we call her one of the OGs.
Yeah.
She's one of the
Yeah.
OGs. She's um, she paved the way for other
Mm-hmm.
women to become action stars,
Yeah,
so.
you might not, and I'm not saying that you wouldn't, but you might not get a Sarah Connor without an Ellen Ripley. Like you might not get
Correct.
that. And it's so great because again, like Ripley within the movie is probably the smartest character in the movie because she's the one that's like, yo, like what are we doing? And she's allowed to be afraid, but she stands her ground. She's the one that kills the unkillable thing. Well, she doesn't kill it, but she releases it into space, but she gets the job done. And like you said, in 1979, that's pretty great. That really was like, oh, because when the captain dies, I remember as like I might have been maybe like 11 when I saw this, which is way too young. But I think the first time I saw it was around 10 or 11 years old. When the captain died, I was like, but he's supposed to be the guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like at that age, I was so used to like, the strong male figures and the characters up front that I was like, wait, if he's dead, like who's leading this thing? And it was Ripley, and it's awesome. She's one of my favorite characters of all time.
So let's give some love to the cast here. We have Tom Skerritt as Dallas, Captain
Yeah.
of the Nostromo. We have John Hurt, that's another legendary actor, so to speak,
Yep.
as Kane. Of course, Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. We have Veronica Cartwright as Lambert. Yaphet Kotto as Parker. Harry Dean Stanton as Brett.
Mm-hmm.
Ian Holm, another known actor over the years, as Ash. And we have, forgive me if I mispronounce this,
Oh yeah.
Balaji Badejo
Mm-hmm.
as the alien. He stood 6 feet 10 inches tall,
Woo.
7 feet inside the costume.
Yeah, dude.
It is his only role to date, but
Yeah.
what a role it was. And
He.
as the voice here, we have Helen Horton as the voice of Mother, but
Yeah.
our guy here is the alien. Good for him,
Yeah,
right?
dude. Like you. It's a luxury to be a part of any film. It's an amazing thing to be a part of any film, but for him to be able to play again one of the most iconic creatures, iconic antagonist, villain, sci-fi, you name it, he gets to be the central threat of one of the greatest horror sci-fi movies of all time, one of the originators when it comes to this type of thing. And even though it's his only film, like you said, what a film to be attached to, man. Like his legacy will always be attached to that, even though it's only one film under his credits. That's a pretty amazing thing to be attached to. If you told me, like, Rick, you'll get to be a part of one movie and one movie only for the rest of your life, but it's going to be such an iconic movie that it will be talked about for generations to come. I'm like, that's not a bad deal. That's not a bad deal.
Yeah, and I think it's such a small cast, but everybody had their chance to shine.
Oh yeah.
We had those standout scenes from Hurt and
Yeah.
from Ian Holm, and even Scarrett, Dallas.
Hmm.
But there's a reason why Ripley's the lead,
Hmm.
because even in such a strong cast, she stood out throughout the entire movie,
Yeah.
to the point that once everyone got picked off, you could see that transformation where she
Hmm.
became just that survivor. She became that person that you're looking like, man, this is a star. This is somebody
Yeah.
special, for that
Yeah.
moment there. So we're going to start winding down here with some closing thoughts. And this franchise, it has such longevity.
Hmm.
But like many franchises, it's had its ups and downs over the years.
Yeah.
And it came out the gate so strong, like many other franchises, came out the gate strong, but eventually it had its ups and downs over the years. Um, we have Aliens, Alien 3, Alien Resurrection. We have Alien versus Predator,
Oh
Alien
boy.
versus Predator Requiem. These are both
Mhm.
comic books first, but then they eventually became movies. We never thought it would happen. Then we ended up getting some prequels. We got Prometheus
Mhm.
and then Alien Covenants. Um, shout out to the to the movie that didn't get made.
Oh, we were so close, man.
Yeah, I need to
Ugh.
look it up. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name right now.
No,
Neil Blomkamp. Yeah,
yes.
Neil Blomkamp, the Alien movie. He was getting ready to do a reboot,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in the middle of Ridley Scott doing the Prometheus movies, the
Yeah.
prequels, and he said, "No, that can't happen." We're
Yeah.
there was some art shown online.
Yeah. The
Sigourney
concept
Weaver.
art.
Yeah,
Listen, the concept art had two things in it that already had me ready to buy my ticket. Obviously, Sigourney Weaver was back, and Hicks was back. And the character of Hicks was played by Michael Biehn. For those of you who don't remember, he was Hicks in Aliens, and he's Kyle Reese from Terminator 1.
right.
So seeing those characters, I was extremely excited because they were letting us know they were doing that thing that we see a lot happening with movies now, where they're kind of going, hey, we're gonna kind of erase the continuity from this movie on. We'd like it to be a direct sequel to part 2 or part 3. And this was taking that route because, as we know, Hicks, unfortunately dies in part 3 off screen. So when I saw that concept art where Hicks was returning and he had like the burns on his face, which happened as a result of Aliens when he got acid, I got extremely excited. I was like, oh my God, like he's going back. Like, okay, so we're going back. This is going to be the official part 3. That excited me. We saw concept art of Ellen Ripley wearing what looked like xenomorph armor. And I was like, I don't even know what that is, but I was so excited. But as you mentioned, really Scott kind of like put his foot down and was like, no, that's not going to happen. I'm going to continue with this for right now. And he gave us, we have Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and that's that.
Right. And now 45 years after Alien was released, we have Alien Romulus.
Yes.
It is set between Alien and Aliens, so
Yep.
that's the setting. Ricardo and I are excited for this because Fede
Yes.
Alvarez, director of
Mhm.
Evil Dead 2013, is citing his use of practical effects to
Mhm.
take us back to the original Alien movie. And then maybe this is the jolt that this franchise needs
Yeah.
to get some new life in it. And, hopefully open things up, because we've been missing this.
Yeah.
We've been missing this. And no shade to Prometheus. I enjoyed
Mhm.
Prometheus.
I like Prometheus.
It was promising. Unfortunately, and I share Ricardo's opinion, him stronger than me. Covenant didn't really live up to
Yeah.
expectations,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Look, I enjoyed Prometheus. And this is a true story. I remember walking out of the theater, and there was two gentlemen walking in front of me, and they kind of looked at each other, and he was like, was that supposed to be a xenomorph? Like, what was that design about? That's not a face hugger. So right off the bat, I could tell that they were really itching for that old Alien feel, and they didn't get it. And I feel like a lot of fans had that feeling because Prometheus, while in that same universe, it never really like it didn't say like, here's a xenomorph, here's a face hugger, here's this, here's that. It was kind of like a nice a horror sci-fi exploration film with little tidbits to the Alien universe that you get like a small image of a xenomorph, and you're dealing with creators and whatnot. But for me as a sci-fi fan, I enjoyed it. But hearing from other people around me, people that I didn't even know, I could tell that it didn't scratch the itch that they were looking for. And I feel like they tried to scratch that itch with Covenant, but I feel like just there was too many things happening, and it just it got lost on me. And I remember hitting you up being like, hey man, I'm kind of sad. Like I love the Alien
Right.
franchise. And so, but now that Fede Alvarez is here, as you mentioned, did Evil Dead 2013. I'm a big fan of Fede Alvarez, and I think that Fede has proven that he understands sometimes, I don't want to call it the basics, but like going back to the basics, if you will, because what made Evil Dead so great at the time was that the budget was extremely low, so a lot of things were practical effects. And when he did Evil Dead 2013, he didn't lose sight of that, and he showed a lot of love for the original film. So it never felt like this was a remake for the sake of just being a cheap remake. Like, he made it in a way that there was so much love and care going into it that I felt like, wow, he put a lot of respect for Evil Dead. So I'm looking forward to Alien Romulus because I feel like he's going to bring that same nature to it, where like this isn't just some cash grab for him. This isn't like, hey, I just kind of want to make an Alien movie. I feel like, no, Fede has proven that he's that guy that, like, if he really likes a property, he wants to put his best foot forward and try to make it the best of his ability. So when he mentioned how much practical effects they were, and you see it in the trailer, when you see the xenomorph, you can tell it's a practical xenomorph. And it's like, just something that small adds so much depth to the scene. And I can't wait. I'm looking forward to all the puppeteering of the face huggers and whatnot. And obviously, we know there will be CGI and visual effects when they need it. But the idea that they worked really hard to build these sets and practical effects, I'm just so excited to see what he's got in store for us.
So that's the main thing, you know, folks, if you're listening or viewing here, the next time you sit down and watch Alien, take time to sit down and take in the fact that the practical effects are what makes this movie. And a lot of the classics, that's what made the classics as well. You know, CGI is great. It's a great tool. It can be used in a great way, but it can also distract from the movie as well. And that's what makes, in our opinion, that's what makes Alien such a special movie.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty, folks. That was the Panel Bros official breakdown for Alien. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe at the Panel Bros on YouTube, we would appreciate it. Also, if you could please let us know your feelings on Alien in the comments below, we would appreciate that as well. Give some love to the xenomorph design, to Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, how you're feeling as far as the franchise went and where the franchise is going. Please let us know in the comments below. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.